And my name's Anthony Seppi. I'm the operations director here at the mill. Again, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come to our session today. It's going to be an excellent session. I wanted to introduce Chris Lawson. He's our executive director here at the mill. Before we get started, he's got a few words that he wanted to communicate to the group and introduce the session.
I thank everybody for coming today. We're excited to be hosting the Manufacturers Roundtable. Fabian Schmahl from Bilstein and the Start Something Bold guys. You know, approximately 2 years ago, we set out to relaunch this incubator, formerly known as BizTag. And so the reason why we did that is because if we want to start something bold, essentially, we're going to have to support and nurture that next gen of disruptors, innovators, those people that are going to transform our community. And so it's pretty apt today that we're in this room, which pays homage to our pioneering past. And those pioneers in 1791 are much like the entrepreneurs today. They are blazing new frontiers, discovering new territories, and changing our lives for the better. But that 2 years ago, we knew that we had a vision of creating that startup community. But we didn't know exactly what that startup community looked like. And so when we looked back in our manufacturing past, we knew that there was something there. It had come to define us. Yet, when we looked at it 2 or 3 years ago, what we saw was manufacturing going to be the backbone of this community into the future? When you talk to people, what they thought about was the former paper mills. So how do you redefine in a whole community's or a whole region's mind that manufacturing is the future? It is sleek and it's sexy. And that's a difficult task because a lot of people don't understand it today, that the most advanced things happening in our economy is not the next Angry Bird app. It's the things like Bilstein. Bilstein creating the most advanced shock absorber in the automotive industry for Tesla. Bilstein does this not because they're afraid of the future, not because they are wed to an automotive past, but because they are interested in inventing the future of automotive history. And so when we look to our advanced manufacturing past, we decided that it would not define us, but it would inspire us. And so we sought to create a platform for that next gen group of individuals innovating in that space. And when we looked out into the community, and so this is why it's really important that I feel like I come to you and tell you thank you, because you were the reason why we took this direction. Because of your persistence and your belief in creating real products, that's not only created a city that is getting back on its feet, but according to Brookings, the Wall Street Journal, the Kauffman Institute, it is the reason why this entire country's economy is getting back on its feet. So we wanted to create a place that would support individuals in succession planning, supply chain development, and just outright disruption in making those physical products, both in advanced manufacturing, clean tech, and their supportive enterprise. And so when we met with people like Richard Kornelak, we were inspired because he looked like us. They often look, you know, when you're down in OTR and you see that app developer from the brandery, that looks like the person making that app. but we have an image of what manufacturing looks like. And when it looks just as cool and has just that kind of visionary thing, that's why we do the things we do. But that needs a higher platform to get out there, to know that these things are key to the reinvention of an economy. And so we are interested in supporting that next gen development of those entrepreneurs. And we are interested in supporting those businesses that have been doing it for years. And so again, I'm thankful and welcome you to the Hamilton Mill. And I am thankful that you provided the inspiration for the relaunch of this incubator. Thank you.
I'm going to be very brief because I know you want to hear the panelists, and so do I. I want to hear your great ideas. On behalf of the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, thanks for being here, and thank the mill, the Hamilton Mill, for partnering this month for our Manufacturers Roundtable. Just to give you a brief commercial, each month we run a roundtable. We invite manufacturers typically to a place of business for them to learn more about that company. The heads of the company will give a little presentation on how they're growing their business, or not growing their business. And we take a tour of those facilities. I'm not looking at you, I'm just standing there. And then we take questions and we try to learn from each other. So what can manufacturers learn from each other? And that's how we started the group. Some of you are here that have been with us, I think, from day one. I think our Manufacturers Roundtable has been around probably for 5+ years. So thanks to the mill for partnering with us. I look forward to your presentation and how you grow your companies. And if anybody's interested in participating in future meetings and you're associated with manufacturing, see me and I'll get you on the invite list. Okay? Thanks so much.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming. I want to thank Kenny, and if you haven't, you can get the Hamilton initiative update by Kenny. And it tells you more about what's going on in the city of Hamilton. They're really going through a transformation within the city, and so it gives you detailed activities. I also want to thank Chris and Anthony for hosting here. I've had the chance to sit in some of the conversations with the startups, and there's a lot of great ideas going on here. And so I think as you learn more about what's going on here and you get to see the space, I think you'll be inspired by what's going on. So you guys can have a seat. Have a seat. So there's no guarantee your business is going to grow, and growing your business isn't an option. And bold growth isn't just a suggestion. And so today we're talking with Fabian, CEO and President of Bilstein, and Ron, the President of VEGA Americas. And we're going to be talking about that Boldacious growth that they've gone through. So as I've gotten to know both these leaders and their companies, one thing I see them doing is they're really pursuing their customers. They're really understanding what their needs are, what their problems are, how they can anticipate the market change so that they can really be there to help support their customers. As their customers see that value, they reward them by ordering more parts. As they order more parts, it forces them to grow their manufacturing. To help fill their manufacturing space, they have to add more jobs. And so they're growing because of the attention that they're making to really focusing on their customers. So you don't add 200 jobs just to maintain the same level of output or even the same level of revenue. You add jobs to really grow your business. And so today we get to hear from two leaders of multi-million-dollar organizations and really get a chance to hear how they have positioned their business, their teams, to really grow in the future. To give you more background, I'll do some introductions. Fabian has been the president and CEO of ThyssenKrupp Bilstein of America since April of 2008. They have a long history of a global leader in the development and manufacture of premium quality, high performance automotive shock absorbers for original equipment, aftermarket and motorsports applications. Let me see. He's a member of the board of directors at the ThyssenKrupp Bilstein of America and a member of the board of trustees for the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. Fabian was born in Göttingen, Germany. He studied at the Technical University of Clausthal, Germany, from which he earned a degree in mechanical engineering. Prior to assuming the reins of Bilstein of America, he worked in the rubber industry with HF Rubber Machinery, where he held the position of executive vice president. And previously, he worked in production manager at ThyssenKrupp in Germany. He lives with his wife Jennifer and 2 children in Cincinnati, Ohio. To give you a little more perspective on Bilstein, they work with tier 1 suppliers in the aftermarket quality shock absorbers and suspension solutions. And they're known for their innovation in high-tech and suspension technology. They manufacture premium quality, high-performance shock absorbers, and they can be found on Chrysler, GM, Ford, Toyota, Nissan, Mercedes, and the new electric car, Tesla. They have over 454 full-time employees as of recently. Ron was raised in Houston, Texas. He spent his career working mostly in the Midwest in Chicago, Cincinnati, Detroit, and Midland, Michigan. After earning a chemical engineering degree from Texas A&M, he went to work for Dow Chemical, and then he also completed his MBA. After working at Dow in multiple commercial roles, he moved to Cincinnati to work for Omart VEGA, which is a privately held instrumentation manufacturer. And in 2008, he was named president and then went on to rename the company VEGA Americas in 2011. He serves on the board of directors for multiple representative firms in North America, and he's been married for 28 years and has 3 kids. So VEGA is a global leader in instrumentation. They pride themselves with providing specialized, best-in-class measurement products for all process industries worldwide. They're located here in Cincinnati with global headquarters in Black Forest in southern Germany. Both facilities have over 50 years of instrumentation experience and provide full manufacturing, engineering, R&D, training, service, sales, and capability. VEGA leads the industry in microwave radar and nuclear instruments while also providing outstanding products using ultrasonic, pressure, vibration switch technologies. Their goal is to create a reliable measurement with a positive customer experience, and they work with customers to understand specific process and application needs. And so you have some of Ron's got some of the VEGA instruments here that we'll talk about in a little bit. One of the things as I've gotten to know both their companies is over the last 5 years, they've grown significantly, both in adding new manufacturing facilities, but then also in hiring. So Fabian, why don't you tell us about when you first became the president and CEO, what was going on at the time, and what were you tasked to do by the people that put you there? What were some of the difficult things that you had to do as you kind of took the reins there?
Sure. It was in April 2008, was still, at that time I didn't really know what was coming, and so especially to the automotive industry. So I think pretty normal, I guess, that what every leader would do in an organization, you know, in the beginning, analyze the staff, the organization, the structure, kind of like the facilities, and then our product portfolio and our customer relationships, our R&D capabilities, and let's say our global collaboration, and then work from there. And, let's say made some needed adjustments. However, as everybody remembers, obviously, summer 2008, in our case, we lost like 50% of our sales, like in a week notice, from 1 week to another. And then we had to do obviously completely different, let's say, make different decisions what we would usually do when you're starting a company.
Okay, great. Ron, tell us about when you kind of took the reins at VEGA. What was going on at that time?
And I took over in the summer of 2008. Like Fabian, it was I didn't know what was coming, what I was about to be hit with. But one of the difficulties I had was I was promoted amongst my peers. I'd been at VEGA for 8 years prior, and I was an outsider. I came in from Dow Chemical, and we were relatively small when I came in, maybe 20 million in sales. By 2008, we were around 65 million. Some nice growth, but still a relatively small company. So not only did we have the Great Recession starting, but when you're promoted amongst your peers, and if your peers are competitive, then you have some of that jealousy, or I don't know what you want to call it. But so we had almost dysfunction at the leadership level We had brand new owners that wanted to get more involved, which were a foreign company. And then you had the Great Recession. So it was easy after that. how much worse can it get? You know? So, but we put in a number of, like Fabian, we went through and looked at our processes. We looked at how we were set up, and it gave us a chance to kind of step back and reevaluate where we're trying to go and where we truly set up, for that vision. So in a lot of ways, in my opinion, the Great Recession for me as an individual, selfishly, it was actually a good thing because it showed the organization that with this new leadership, that we could make it through. We didn't have to lay anybody off. We did have to watch costs and make some changes, but not laying people off, maintaining a 401k, a couple of things like that, bought some security for people, and then they understood we were trying to really do what's best for the company. So I'd say the 2000, I wouldn't want to do it again, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Great. In the video series Men Who Built America, we see different titans going through pivots throughout their careers. We see Rockefeller going from kerosene to gasoline, and we see Vanderbilt kind of shifting away from shipyards and shipping material through the sea to actually owning the railroad. He believed that if he could own not only the railroad, but then the tunnels and the bridges, that he could really own the transportation of goods throughout the U.S. And so as you've kind of navigated through pivots and change at your companies, share with us a time that you had to make a pivot and move your business in a new direction. Ron, why don't we start with you?
Start with me. Business-wise, we had a really good vision when I came in 2008, so that didn't have to change much. So I was fortunate in that respect. And the gentleman that I worked for, he's still a good counselor for me, but he'd put together a good vision. So really it was a matter of fine-tuning and going after the markets that made sense. But probably the two things that were more pivotal for me, which may sound crazy, but one, we rebranded the company. And we were the Omart company since 1951. And then we became Omart VEGA in 1998. So in 2011 to be called VEGA and take away the Omart name was pretty traumatic for a lot of people. And I've got half a dozen people that have been with us over 40 years. I've got a lot of people in that 20 to 40 year mark. So you don't want to downplay the past, but in order to move forward, we had to become bigger than just the Omart VEGA Corporation. The VEGA brand is a global brand, and it would buy us a lot more, especially in Latin America and other areas that we were responsible for. So making the change of a brand name might sound like too much, maybe it doesn't sound too difficult, but it actually was somewhat traumatic for people until about 2 days later. And it really wasn't that bad. We're still in business. We had good, in fact, we could boost up our marketing efforts because now we were viewed as a global company. And so we had to change from our traditional blue colors to yellow. So there's some of those things, but I'd say that part went pretty well. The other thing which I'd recommend you never do, and you're going to have to, but a pivotal decision we made was to change our ERP in 2010. And that, I can't use the word I'm thinking, but I don't want to do that again. Nothing against any of the major software providers, but it was a very, very difficult transition. And for about 6 months, you really don't know which way's up. But it positioned us to where we were aligned with our parent company, and our productivity went up almost double 3 years later because our work processes were aligned, our software aligned with those work processes, and we actually used the software. It wasn't just a place to store some data. It became part of our normal daily procedures. So as traumatic as it was the right thing to do. People hated it, they didn't want to do it, and I had to keep reminding them that the vision would get us to a better place. And it did, but it just was actually painful to get there. So anyway, that's 2 examples maybe.
Fabian, why don't you share a time that you had to navigate through a change?
Okay. Well, I think it was mainly, it started really during the recession, and what certainly helped was a big sense of urgency for everybody. So I think that's all one things I learned, like you really want to change something dramatically, you even have to think about it to create either you have a crisis or you create some kind of a crisis to really also that sense of urgency. But I think in our case, it was really, one key decision was to more or less invest during the downturn time. So, on R&D and our operational excellence, which was very controversial internally. So we were losing money, and with our owner. So it was quite difficult to convince him. But at the end of the day, this was really the time when, let's say, we had the resources available to work on a lot of things, because as soon as the market came back, then we didn't really have those resources anymore. We also kind of anticipated that as our customers, which are all the big OEMs, the big car manufacturer, GM, Ford, Mercedes, Toyota, I mean, most of those guys had some big layoffs, so which pretty much meant that some of the work they used to do, you know, they pushed down to the tier ones. So we kind of set ourselves up to be able to fulfill their needs, which became more or less part or requirement of, let's say, being awarded programs. And with this work and creating this operational excellence, then we were really able internally in our organization. We probably used to be more, let's say, manufacturing arm for North America for our company worldwide. And we have really transformed our company into an, let's say, we have a completely independent R&D center. We do a lot of R&D, we develop our own products, and it really has changed our opportunities completely.
Great. In another scene in The Men Who Built America, we see Carnegie making a smart bet on steel. And he knew that building a bridge over the Mississippi would allow him to kind of move goods from the east to the west. And it was the biggest structure that was built at that time. He also knew that it was going to be a challenge to get people to believe that that structure was safe. And so he kind of played off a myth that elephants wouldn't go over an unstable structure. And so what he did was, on the day the bridge opened, he not only led his team across the bridge, but he also led an elephant to the other side. So what this talks about is it can be hard to gain traction within organizations and with your customers. How have you best aligned people towards a new direction? So Fabian, why don't you start with that?
I think the key is really transparency. I mean, you just got to be open with your employees, and you know, if not, usually my experience is, you know, employees make up their own mind, rumors start, everything gets kind of blown out of proportion. So as long as you're transparent with everybody, and you have to be very open about the good and about the bad. And I think then when you talk about communication, the consistency is the other really key. Which that's more the harder part. I mean, in our case, for example, we do a full company meeting every 2 months, which when we used to be in 2009, we could do it during, let's say, one event. We have a facility which can house about 200 employees. As much as we have grown now we have to do 4. And so if you look at NOVEC, we do it every 2 months, now for 6 years. So let's say there were roughly 80 events or so. I think I missed maybe 1 or 2. And we not one single time did we shift one, delayed one, or not do it. And that is really the hard part. I mean, everybody knows, you can read it in any book, and how good communication, but really consistently doing it and talk to everybody. And then I think big thing is when you do changes or you do something new, quick wins. I mean, get a few guys involved and celebrate the wins, and it usually, I think it's more sexy than success. So it usually helps.
That's great. Brian, why don't you talk to us?
I just agree with Fabian. No, I do. I think the communication is the absolute heart of any type of change you make, and transparency. And if people feel they can trust you, because when you make a major change, it is about going somewhere new, so they have to trust what you're saying and what you're doing. So frequent communication, transparency with the communication. I agree with consistency, because people are looking for something that's different. And let's face it, most people don't like change, and it's going to be something different. I'll use a small example. We renovated our facilities over the last 2 years, and we've built our facilities such that we can double our business and stay in the same location. And I hope that's the case. But as we're going through that process, we had frequent meetings where we talked about the new facilities. We had pictures. We had discussions around the design and what we were doing. And about halfway through, somebody came up to me and they said, you know, it's fine you're communicating, but I'd really like to know how it affects me. And I said, what do you mean? Where am I sitting and what's my desk going to look like? Okay, I'm not quite ready, but we'll do that. And when it got down to that personal level, and we were to explain it, it's almost like the air came out of the room. Now, you can't do that too early, right? But we did it at an appropriate time, and people got on board. We made some major changes. We had high walls, now we've got Most people are in locations that are about this high in the walls. We have a completely open environment, which is very easy for people to move around and change locations as needed. And so the facilities were completely different than what people had become accustomed to. And I'll say, for the most part, we haven't lost anybody. And I think in general, we do an employee survey once a year. We've had mostly positive comments. So that transition went well, but we over-communicated and then tried to get to a personal level where we could. And that's hard. The other thing we do, just like Fabian, is we have quarterly meetings. Fortunately, we can still put everybody in one room. We've got about 240 people, so it'll hold that, not for much longer. But during that quarterly meeting, we try to talk about our values and show examples of that to show consistency. We talk about our financials. I'll even give our operating profit, even though we're privately held, and that lets people know we're making money and that we're investing money. I have to remind them that top line revenue does not mean that's the profit we're making. There's always that thing called taxes and costs, et cetera. But that quarterly meeting is a chance for people to also give some input on what they're concerned about, and we do that through, send us an email. They don't have to put you on the stage, but that over communication I think does help when you get ready for transitional change, because it is hard. So
Great. So we talk about growth creation is really about the pursuit of your customers, and with technology advancing so frequently or fast in the last few years, how do you really continue to make sure your products wow your customers? Share with us an example where your customers are kind of pushing you to exceed. And actually on the next slide, Fabian, we have some pictures of people tattooing themselves with your products, and so there's a passion around your
is that
products,
yours?
which is
Can I
great.
see? That's nice. It looks good.
But how do you really make sure that you're staying connected with your customers? Fabian, why don't you start?
So, yeah, I'm not sure who this guy is, but that's obviously what we want. For us, it's a little bit, we separate obviously between our aftermarket and motorsports. So, especially in the motorsports area, off-roading. So we have the last 20, 30, 40 years, usually most of the Bar 500, Bar 1000 are won on our products. So that gives us a great opportunity to from a branding, but also really, to test our products in real life in the harshest conditions, and then really to develop those products. At the same time, the OEMs, keep pushing us, especially our German OEMs, on reducing weight, which becomes also more and more important in the US with the new CAFE standards. And then, of course, on the active systems, cost is always a big topic. So we really trying to find a good balance between really what our customers need. Obviously, is key, to really listen to them. That you don't develop something which has great functionality, but if nobody can afford it, that doesn't really help you either. So for us, it's always more or less that triangle between, let's say, weight, functionality, actually for durability and cost. So those are really the four areas. But again, being combined with on the OEM side and really in motorsports and aftermarket, that gives us a great advantage and to develop new products. That's
great. Ron, how do you really connect with customers and really make sure you're meeting their needs?
So you guys don't have this?
Actually, the tattoos are in places we can't show. At the heart. That's a great question, because at the end of the day, our customers really don't care what products they buy from us. They're trying to solve a different problem in their facility. And we categorize the need under 3, and they can be inclusive or separated, but they're safety, reliability, or efficiency. So for example, I'll give 2 extremes. At Dow Chemical, they're making some products that are so caustic that if you were to breathe them, you'll pass away. So they have to be extremely safe. So this goes on top of a tank. It tells them the level of liquid inside that tank, and it makes it very safe. They don't have to worry about opening that tank to find out what's going on. They also want it reliable. They don't want to get near that area for 5 years at a time. They try to run their facilities for 5 years before any type of maintenance shutdown. And of course, the ultimate reason to put this in is for efficiency. They want to be able to run the plant with fewer people and get more pounds out per day. So we supply those 3 things. Then you switch all the way to someone like Ernest and Julio Gallo, and they're a big customer of ours. If you've ever been to a large winery, it's basically a small chemical plant. it's a lot more fun, but it is a small chemical plant. But they do the same thing. It's the exact same thing. You have alcohol that's being produced. It's a flammable product. You got to make sure that they know the levels for tax reasons. The government kind of wants to know how much alcohol they're producing with their wine, and they want it very reliable because they don't want to go touch the gauge. They're up on tanks that are 40 to 50 feet in the air. So as long as we're doing that, people are happy. Then the game is what Fabian says. They want it faster, they want it cheaper, and they want to do everything. And even though we've got our deliveries down from time you place an order with us till it delivers, 80% of our products we can ship out in less than 5 days. 4 or 5 years ago, that was 6 weeks. So that's a huge improvement. And then dang Amazon comes out with this drone thing. And now everybody's like, can you get it to me the same day? Well, not yet, but you got to continue to try to get that continuous improvement to where you'll get the delivery times down, and continue to reduce costs. And the cost side's obviously harder because there's a lot of technology in this. But the final thing we look for is, in some ways, innovations that can separate us. Most of our competitors are multi-billion-dollar companies, and so for us to be different, we have to provide something of value that's a higher level of value than just the reliability of a big company. So every once in a while we'll come out with some innovations that are a little bit different, and that gives us kind of that edge, we hope, for people to continue to buy from us.
I was reading an article about NASA, and I was kind of comparing two different times in their history. One talked about Apollo 13, when the landing on the moon was prevented by an explosion that disabled the spacecraft's propulsion and life support. And it talked about how that team really went into a locked room, and just their engineers came up with solutions to safely get those men back to Earth. In contrast, the article was talking about the space shuttle Columbia and how engineers noticed some tiles being dislodged during takeoff. And after that, the engineers wanted to really understand, they wanted to reposition a telescope to look at the spacecraft to understand if there was any damage. They wanted to have a spacewalk so the astronauts could firsthand really understand what was going on, if there was any damage. And what the article was talking about was how the NASA had grown up. They've gotten so big, there was so much bureaucracy within their organization that those engineers' requests to really investigate and really make sure their astronauts were safe got shot down by different layers of management. And so as your companies have grown, how have you really positioned that so that engineers can really be effective at really meeting the needs of your customers, and how do you make sure that it doesn't get too big and kind of slows down the effectiveness of the organization? So Fabian, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very good point for us. I mean, we know what in 5 years tripled the size of our company, and we're seeing those things exactly. And I think number one thing what I always try is just don't be tempted to put too many rules in place. Because usually you put rules in place because they're like one or two maybe don't follow. And it's usually much more common sense. I think like expense reports is the best example. I mean, every company who has that 100-page travel policy because like 2 or 3 people didn't follow, and I don't know, put breakfast twice on the expense report or whatever they did. So, and then you put all those rules on everybody else. Yeah. So, and then I think those are some of the things when you just go with good judgment and deal with those individual cases versus putting rules in for everybody. That helps a lot. On the other side, obviously, especially when you grow, I can tell from our company, things that used to work well with 200 employees don't work so well with 600-700 employees anymore. So we are also in the process really in a lot of areas where we didn't have very sound systems now to put more business systems into place where things are, let's say, more self-explanatory, where it's not, where it's very clear what is the next step and who do you have to ask for approval or not, or, if something is not here, what do you do versus getting into meetings and then having steering committees and all kind of stuff where you try to figure out, what to do.
Ron, why don't you share about how you handle that at VEGA?
We're kind of in a transition phase as well in that respect. From an innovation, with our engineers, what I really think drives more innovation is both security and trust. If they feel they're in a secure company where they have a long-term future, I think they're apt to give more and work on more things that are either leading edge or perhaps even some that we call crazy. Also the trust aspect, where you say, look, I trust you're going to do the right things, And if it doesn't mean it's super productive, that's okay, because especially with innovation, you can't always know where you're going, right? You got to kind of set a path, but it's going to change. So we've done a couple of things of late to help show people we're more trusting. And I agree. I hate rules to a certain extent, except if you're breaking the law a lot. So I've been in a courtroom before. Is that what this is?
I think it's a joint
Oh,
city
okay.
council, and I think it could be a courtroom too.
I like the city council
Looks
part better.
familiar, I see, right?
But there is an aspect of innovation coming from security, and so we've worked real hard. We've changed a couple things. For instance, we've eliminated annual reviews. And I know that's crazy, and a lot of people are like, well, how do you make sure people understand how they're performing? Well, to me, the annual review was at the end of the year, obviously, and it was more of a reflection of the past 3 months, and in general, it was more of a, hey, everything's going great. So what we've tried to encourage now is our managers to have frequent dialogues, but we twisted a little bit and said we expect our employees that report to those managers to have frequent dialogues as well. We've made it a two-way street. We just started that this fall. It's going to take a couple of years to get in place, but the point is you've got to trust each other in order to make this thing work. We're trying to eliminate the amount of approval you have to expend money. If you spend more than $2,000 an employee, I don't need to know about it. I really don't. It's more than $10,000 on something. Above that, okay, maybe. You got to trust people to be smart with the money, and if you set the right culture, I think they will. We have flex hours, so you can come between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. when you start, and it's up to you to go off the clock and take your 15-minute break because it's legal or by law, and come back. And so we try to do those things, and inevitably, like you say, one or two people are going to break the rules, and we try to handle those individually and not create a big HR form to make sure it never happens again. So I guess in summary, the security, the trust, the transparency, I think that's what's going to get us to another level of innovation and not creating more rules and having people put in kind of in their pods and expected to work. A final thing we have is we're starting to create more work teams where there's not a true manager. There's a leader, but there's not a manager that those people report to. Because you tend to, I don't know about you guys, but I say guys as neutral, you all, or y'all. Y'all's a lot easier. But you tend to say things differently to your boss than to your peers than to people that work for you. I think that's human nature. So if there's not a boss and you're working on a project, we just found you get more out of it than if there always seems to be a clear manager there. So.
Great. We're here at the Hamilton Mill, which is an incubator and really helping startups kind of get off the ground. And so a lot of these entrepreneurs have a lot of ideas and their companies don't listen to them. And so they leave companies like yours to kind of start off on their own. How do you really encourage?
Why are you pointing me? We're growing and they're
pointing this way.
Okay. I'm sitting here this time, man. I'm in the wrong chair.
But how do you really encourage your teams to bring up crazy new ideas? And how do you demonstrate that you're willing to act on them? Ron, why don't you start?
I really do think it has to do with your relationship as a leader with the folks you're working with. We had an open house for our new facilities in October. We have, like I said, 240 employees. We had over 850 people attend. People felt comfortable bringing their family and friends, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to also explain to people what we do. So we had a lot of demo stations set up so the employees and their families could understand the equipment and how it truly helps mankind. But part of that, what I agreed to do was a dunking booth. And it was 55 degrees that day. The water, they didn't heat. I think they did it on purpose. And it was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But it also brings you kind of a human aspect to it. And you're like, hey, I'm one with you guys. And they got, for $3, they could throw a ball at me. And it was a charity fund. And I will next time write the check. It was not worth the amount we raised. We raised a couple, but why can't you get $3 a ball? But anyway, but it does show. And so the point of that whole story is if you can get in the trenches with people, show them that you make mistakes, you're willing to be humble, and you're willing to accept crazy ideas even if they don't work, which we've had a couple of those, and admit when something doesn't work and stop it. We started a joint venture in 2009, didn't work, killed it in 2010. We could have kept it kind of limping along, but it just wasn't working. So I think if people see that, I think they're more apt to trust the innovation will be understood, and you can talk about some crazy ideas. Can't accept everything, but you can at least get some of those.
Great. Fabian, how do you kind of structure your team to kind of push ideas?
Well, Ron said, I think it comes first back as direct reflection on the leadership. So obviously, on my position, and how I interact interact with the employees, but then also the top management team. So really having that expectation that every manager is willing and open to change and is trying, and more or less monitoring it closely if you hear anything, to, have those developmental discussion with the management. Then similar what Ron said, we have usually actually every year during our company picnic have a dunk booth where myself and
every year.
Everybody else, like every year.
I don't want to sit in your chair now.
Several years in a row. Those are just little things. I mean, another thing we do, we call Brats for Bilstein, where actually the management cooks for all the employees, serves the employees. The key is at that time we really get together in a very informal environment. We eat together, we sit outside, and it gives you a really different connection to each other, where employees also, in my opinion, much more willing to bring up ideas. And then obviously it's up to you, to either commit resources, money, time, all those things, and then try some things out. And you just got to do it, and then got to keep focus on it. And then it works great. I mean, we most of our new products had a lot of either new products or, let's say, operational improvements. Obviously, come directly from the employees on the line. I mean, they do the job every day. They know it much better than all of us. I think the last part. I mean, to some of you have been to our facility. We call our Lean Learning Center, and it's in the middle of our production area and production office, and everything is out of glass. So we have like 2 doors, so the office employees can get in, the production employees get in. It's completely transparent, so all the ideas and everything what everybody brings up is on big boards. Everybody can see it, so there's nothing hidden. And I think that's another key thing, that it's open, everybody has access, easy access, and then can try it out, and if it doesn't work, we move on.
That's great. I'm hearing a lot of you, Bill, talk about just being transparent leaders within your organization, and really that helps build the trust with your employees so that they can really go and do the best job that they can do. So
Add on, he reminded me of something we did this past summer. We get all of our salespeople in about every quarter, and it's a good chance, and we have a lot of people live outside the city, and it's a good chance for them to interact, and we have the normal sales meetings and talk about growth and opportunities, but normally we have an afternoon where we just do a little bit of downtime, and we'll play golf, or we'll go to the kart racing or different things for people to get interaction. But we tried something different. We decided we played 9 holes of golf, but each team was tasked with finding out 1 improvement opportunity and 1 growth opportunity. It's amazing what a little bit of golf and a few beers will get. We got more ideas out of that afternoon than probably the previous year. And we took a lot of them and said, we're going to implement these. They all voted on the best ones, but it gave them, first of all, the feeling that their ideas were going to be acted on, especially for improvement, and that we'd listen to them for some of the growth areas. So little things like the company picnics and all that, I think they're big things. I think they do make a big difference.
I know both your companies have our headquarters in Germany. How do you really make being a global company a competitive advantage? Fabian, why don't you start?
One of the absolute keys of our success, I think, is the global collaboration, because it's impossible, at least for automotive, to be profitable and have all the resources you really need, or what our customers want. So we have to be able to share resources between different countries, between different locations, that we don't work parallel on the same things. And it is so incredible hard to really bring all those people together, different languages, different cultures, different time zones. Unfortunately, with all the email which I exchange, usually everybody interprets something in an email, which is usually never in there, and which doesn't help. So still, that's a crisis in 8 or 9. I mean, we focused heavily on personal exchange. So really meeting. We had a lot of travel costs, which were all questioned. But you see, as soon as people meet, they have a beer at night, they go bowling, they do something else. Also, whenever we meet, when we have workshops, we spend almost as much time on planning the let's say, outside the company activities as we do really, the inside the activity, the workshop itself. And that helps so tremendously if everybody develops in the different cultures, a personal level. So but that's resource sharing, and this is really, really the key. And then the same thing, as a global company, we are able then to share our supply chain. We're looking at best practices and standardized equipment. So there's just a lot of, let's say, synergies out there. It's just really hard to get to them.
Similar to Fabian, when our parent purchased the remaining shares in 2008, we were actually two separate companies with two separate cultures, two separate logos, two separate product lines, with some commonality. But the feeling was we were completely separate. And anytime you take a company with over 50 years experience and a foreign company buys them, there is that, I'd say there was some animosity. So I spent the first 2 or 3 years trying to get people to understand that the leverage and the ability to work as a global company was going to be a huge advantage for us. And it took time for people to really accept that. But I told them it didn't matter if a company in Chicago bought us or Germany, it doesn't matter. Somebody else now owns us, and that was a lot of problems for people. They didn't feel independent. But once we started flying people back and forth and having individual meetings and having groups get together to talk about the same problems, those walls started breaking down. It's not solved. We still have ways to go. In fact, this summer we're going to take our marketing manager from Cincinnati and our production manager. They're going to go over to VEGA, Germany, and spend 6 weeks. And their counterparts are going to come over to VEGA Americas. So it forces them to sit in the chair of the counterpart they have. It also allows them to understand a little bit more about each company and how they work and how we're really not that different. We just have a little bit different language. So it's a great chance to try to create that transparency and that cooperation that really is required, because at the end of the day, I want our customers, whether they're in Cincinnati or Texas or Germany or Beijing, to feel like they're buying from the same company. And that's the ultimate goal, is to get that feel the same, whether it's products or the marketing or the people they talk to. And if you get that commonality and you've got a great product, then I think that really can secure customers and get more growth and more sales.
As our closing question, in 1759, Arthur Guinness took out a 9,000-year lease at the brewery location. He had a bold vision that lived beyond his life. And so, thinking about your careers, and after you retire, what do you want to be remembered by? What's your legacy that you want to have as leading this organization? Fabian, why don't you start?
I think the key for me would really that the company will continue to succeed, so that I'll be able to set everything up in a way that even 5 or 10 years later, that the company is in a growth and a successful way. So creating good paying and reliable jobs in the community for the families, and obviously good and safe products, and innovative in innovation.
Very similar. Coming from Dow Chemical, publicly traded, quarterly earnings are key. So everything had to happen that quarter, and you learn to think shorter term. And so when I first came to this role in 2008, the new owners, I sat down with them. I said, "What are your expectations?" And I was expecting a laundry list of statistics around revenue and operating profit and organizational costs, et cetera. And they said, "In 50 years, we want this company to be in business. That means in the next 10 or 20 years, when you're president, you have to leave it to where it's still rolling 10 or 20 years after that." And I really had a hard time getting my head around that, because I just wasn't used to it. And I was like, God, thinking 50 years, I don't know what next year is going to look like, much less 50. But our owners, and having that long-term mentality, it does change your perspective. And if you have a quarterly, a poor quarter or a poor year, that's okay, as long as you can explain it and think long-term that you're going to overcome that. So one is making sure as I leave, the organization will continue for as long as it can, 10 or 20 years out. And the other thing, personally, I get a lot of satisfaction of helping people exceed beyond what they think they can do. So if they're willing and open to constructive criticism and improvement ideas, then there's nothing better to see somebody start this level and get to this level. It doesn't mean a promotion necessarily. It can be they're just more of a master at what they do. So I take personal pride in that, but that's to the individual level, I think.
The question
Sure.
is, you did away with your annual reviews.
Yes.
What have you seen as a result of that? Because Deming talked about that years ago and no one ever followed him.
Yeah. Well, we just did it this fall, so it's a little bit early, but it's a great question. First of all, we have a group that gets together every 2 months called the People Managers Forum. And it's a way for everybody that's a people manager to sit in a room and talk about common issues. And the objective is to improve from that meeting, not just talk about what's going on in each function. So we started with them. We said, what if we eliminated annual reviews? And probably 80% of them said, please. It's an exercise in futility. But we said, look, but the balance is you will give basically annual reviews every day. You need to be talking to your people. If there's a performance issue, address it immediately. We've got a process for that. If things are going well, it's good to give a thumbs up every once in a while, but we expect the reverse from the employees. And we announced it at a quarterly meeting in October, and I got great interaction from people. In general, when you announce a change, you kind of get the but in general, people are really on board. So I think it's going to take us to another level. The key, though, is, and what we got from is my HR group went crazy initially, said, you can't do that. You've got to have legal protection, and we got to know what people are doing every year. And I said, well, we can email what people's performance is throughout the year. And what it boiled down to, what you said, it was a couple of managers that weren't doing their job, and the annual review forced them to do their job. I said, well, then let's address that issue and explain what we mean by management, as opposed to trying to get an annual review to click a form out. So far, I hate them, so I was in favor of it anyway. I like the interaction. I just don't like the year-end process. It was a ton of time, and it never really, I don't think much came out of it, to be honest. So, to answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a question, if you mentioned, Fabian, about folks exercising judgment and limiting that control, and using quality judgment, and you going to this new performance system, obviously, like, hiring the right person is critical. And I'm curious if you guys have any kind of special way of filtering folks to make sure that you have a good fit.
Yeah, we go through quite a process when we're hiring employees. So from several interviews, obviously starting with HR, phone screening interviews, then usually we do some, let's say, cross-functional team interviews. Of course, here we also want to get the buy-in. Let's say we're hiring somebody in purchasing, usually still our operations, engineering, and other groups where management is involved or hiring them. And then last but not least, we also have an external source, an industrial psychologist, where we do some additional testing. And then see if it's a right fit and certain requirements are met.
We have a similar process. We have an external analysis to give us a little bit on behavioral and mental acuity, things like that, just so we're clear. I love to ask certain interviewees, write me a one-page letter on why you would do something right now. And you get to see their written skills, their thinking skills. Can they react on the spot? I don't do that to everybody. Certain jobs wouldn't require it. But so we'll do that every once in a while, and then we do the cross-functional team and some interviewing by a lot of people. So it's especially as you're growing fast. I think that's the hardest part, because people want warm bodies, and that's the wrong. You just can't do that. You got to have the people that fit the culture and fit the vision of the company, I think. So it's a hard one. If you find a good way to do it, let me know, because that's the hardest part.
Well, thank you both for taking time to kind of share your stories with us. I think it was really insightful to kind of hear. You both kind of started at the same point. You kind of both had a really economic situation that you had to navigate and really position your business to grow in the future. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate the time. Why don't we give them a round of applause?